Four different doctors in four different regions of the country this morning, all here to talk about the spread of the Omicron variant in America and what they are seeing in their respective regions. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for hanging with us. So I want to talk to Dr. Hong about Flurona. That is something that was reported first out of Israel, and I believe the first known case of that here in the U.S. came out of California. What exactly is it, and what are the symptoms? How does it differ from Omicron?
So Flurona is not a crazy union of influenza and SARS-CoV-2 together. It rather is one person who gets, unluckily, both at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's a new name, but not a new concept. In infectious disease, we've seen it a zillion times. The first case of Flurona actually was in February of 2020. In retrospect, in the United States already. So it's just increased recognition as we get more influenza cases. But we're not expecting it to be anything super new.
So is it really just, I mean, literally flu symptoms plus COVID symptoms?
Yes, flu and COVID together in the same person. It's just trending on Twitter. That's the main difference.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely
we
right.
We love our terminology and our hashtags, don't we? Dr. Hawkinson, to you now. And how far are we from our peak? We hit about 1 million cases just a few days ago. We're still around 500,000 just about every day. We talked to a data expert who expects a couple million cases per day in the next couple of weeks. Do you agree? How far from the end are we?
Yeah, you know, we know there are a lot of models out there. Some of them are very accurate. What I heard was in the next few weeks, or maybe by the end of January, early February, we'll hit a peak of cases. But unfortunately, that's not the end of the story. We know that hospitalizations then will trail that by 2 or 3 weeks. And so I think that's the important thing to know. Cases are extremely important, but what we're seeing that the real measure of how bad this pandemic is through that hospitalizations number. Those are really what is going to be determine the capacity of our hospitals and all those other things that we've been talking about. So unfortunately, I don't have a good crystal ball. We know that the modelers are out there. The models would say, if there is validity in those, that, you know, it'll still be a few weeks before we've reached the peak cases. But unfortunately, what we have to wait for those next few weeks for those hospitalization numbers.
So, Dr. Morgan, the Omicron variant seemingly surprised people, and I think the main aspect that was surprising was just how transmissible it was. What is the likelihood that another variant that we don't know about yet can spring up at some point in the next few months?
Alex, that is my number one worry, and I think, you know, absolutely we should consider that the virus is already mutating. When we have millions of cases around the world, and here in the United States, we are modeling to go up to 2 million cases a day. That's 2 million opportunities for this virus to invade our bodies, replicate, form these mutations cluster, and we end up with a new variant. When this Omicron variant was first identified in South Africa on November 24th, this was probably not the first place this variant was existing. It was just the first place it was being identified. And so we've got to get out of this cycle where we are chasing the variant. We are now steeped here in Omicron while the virus is ahead of us, mutating and replicating and moving towards its next variant. We have got to get a handle on the unvaccinated, not only in this country, but wherever they reside in the world for whatever reason, if it's access or in the United States, just voluntarily opting out. Because it is the unvaccinated who continue to drive these surges, who continue to challenge our resources here and also continue to keep us in this pandemic, because these are the reservoirs that the virus will seek. It will seek the susceptible, the vulnerable, including our children who are unvaccinated under the ages of 5 years of age. And that improves the opportunity for the next variant to arrive. We already see with Omicron that our vaccines are under challenge, and our medical therapeutics, our monoclonal antibodies, are also under challenge, which makes these resources scarce and forces physicians and hospitals to be in a situation where we have to triage patients and determine who can get these scarce resources and who cannot. That is morally degrading for hospitals and physicians as well, to be in that position, to not be able to help everyone.
I meant to mention this earlier, but if either of you, any of you has a question for the other, please go ahead and direct it to any of the doctors we see here. No one needs to hear us talk for the next couple of minutes. But Dr. Koh in Yale, to that point, some have suggested this Omicron variant could actually do us a favor and get us on the road to herd immunity. Is there any truth to that theory?
Well, I think, first of all, I want to emphasize the point of the previous speaker. I think made several important points. But one, certainly the threat of new variants is important. And that's going to happen in places that we allow uncontrolled transmission. You know, when we have large volumes or large mass of replicating viruses. And those are all opportunities for emergence of new variants. And we can't really leave any of the populations, anyone in the globe, very much behind. I think the experience with Omicron is an excellent one, and it's unfortunately one of many. We've had Delta variant from emerging in India, the Alpha variant in UK, Gamma variants in Brazil, but we can see with Omicron, within a month of it being first detected in South Africa, it's spread to cause a pandemic wave throughout the country. So I think the points made by the previous speaker are extremely important, that if we think of this as a problem just of the United States, we are always going to be the dog biting its tail because of all the externalities, all the risk of transmission in places which are not getting vaccinated and where uncontrolled transmission are occurring. I think in terms of, where we're going to be going forward in this is, we're really in difficult times where we have current vaccines which are effective against severe outcomes. They're not transmission blocking vaccines, and our current toolbox, public health toolbox, we're not because of the high transmissibility posed by Omicron, we're not going to be able to control transmission. To large levels, perhaps in specific vulnerable populations like our nursing homes, congregate settings like our correctional facilities, and hopefully our schools. But we're going to have to get out of this reactive mode and think proactively about what's going to be the next line of vaccines that may work more effectively and against the new variants in the future.
So speaking of looking ahead when it comes to vaccinations, we're hearing about a possible fourth dose or a second booster shot as a recommendation coming from the CD. I want to hear from all of you your take on the need for another dose or a booster. Dr. Chin Hong, let's start with you.
I don't think we really need it right now. The antibodies will only last for a few months, and we're in the middle of the hurricane right now. By the time it gets rolled out, it will have waned by the next time we need it. I think we have T cells and B cells inside that will continue to kick the virus out with 3 doses, so we'll be continuing to get the protection against serious disease, hospitalization, and death. Maybe in the future for select populations, but right now, not really a thing that I think we definitely have the evidence for at this moment.
Dr. Hawkinson, the same to you.
Yeah. Oh, I agree exactly with what Dr. Chin Hong said. We know the variants have arisen. We know variants will continue to arise. But what do we have? We have these miracles of modern medicine and science. These are the vaccines. We know that antibody levels, they go down. That's naturally what happens in our body, in our immune system. But the large component of this, we have those T cells that continue to offer great protection, great immune response against those most important things that we've heard about from my other colleagues: hospitalization, severe disease, and death. And we know these vaccinations work. We know they are safe, very few risks, certainly little risk compared to the extreme benefits that these vaccines continue to make. Even the spike protein that we're using in the mRNA vaccines right now, that original or ancestral Wuhan spike. These vaccines continue to offer great protection against hospitalization, severe disease, and death. It's about getting those vaccines into arms, getting those people who haven't been vaccinated. The important thing also is that time from that second dose. During that time, your immune system is evolving, is continuing to develop new kinds of antibodies to those variants we haven't even known or seen yet. It's that third and that booster dose that then helps that those immune responses expand. But really, I would totally agree with my colleague, Dr. Chin Hong, on that. We have these vaccines. We know they offer great protection still. They continue to protect those people and reduce their risk of hospitalization, severe disease, and death.
Dr. Morgan, before we go, an interesting piece in the Journal of the American Medical Association from 6 former Biden advisors, all leaders in the health community. You probably know many of them. They wrote to the president saying he needs to adopt a new normal to shift towards this just being an endemic, part of our life. What do you make of that?
And so I think that's a bit of waving the white flag. And I think what we need to do is address the unvaccinated. We're talking about a 4th dose and a 5th dose. That's to continue to protect those who are vaccinated from the unvaccinated. We've got to begin to address the unvaccinated where they are receiving this information, and be disruptive in these areas and in these arenas where they are being fed this information, and insert ourselves into this conversation. I have not seen the medical and scientific community really be aggressive and begin to insert ourselves into these conversations, into these uncomfortable conversations where this disinformation is being spread. One thing about endemic, and we are hearing more and more about it, is that the virus hasn't completely gone away. We are learning to live with it. That also means that the virus continues to seek opportunities to mutate and change and have new variants that can continue to challenge our society. Just because it's endemic doesn't mean that its properties and characteristics change. And so we have to think about that. And I think that's a bit of waving the white flag. It may be a reality check, but maybe I'm just not there yet. I would like to see us really have a push to get people vaccinated globally and see if we can really defeat this virus.
All right, Dr. Ko, I don't think you have a crystal ball on your desk there in front of you, but in 10 seconds, where do you see us as far as COVID goes in the next month, let's say?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of hurt in the next month, as the previous speakers have said. We're going to have, we're having different peaks come at different times in the U.S. But if we look at a whole, the next 2 months are going to be devastating months in terms of hospitalizations and loss of life. Let me just say one question about, I think what the authors of that JAMA article are raising is that we do have to think about the next phase. We have to get out of this constant reactive phase where we say that we've conquered it, and then we get hit with the next wave and we go back and forth. So we're going to need a long-term strategy. And this is really embedded in this issue of whether we need a 4th or 5th dose. We don't know. Really, the answer now is we don't know how a 4th dose will work or whether we need it. We haven't followed patients, as long enough to really know that answer. But the bigger question is, are people going to take a 4th dose? Are they going to take a dose of a vaccine every 6 months? And so we're going to have to think of multilateral solutions, multiple solutions to the problem, which will also include testing, which also include the use of oral therapeutics, and including sound public health prevention.
All right, we're going to have to stop it there for today. Dr. Chin Hong, Dr. Jane Morgan, Dr. Dana Hawkinson, and Dr. Albert Ko, thank you so much for joining us this morning for our COVID-19's doctors panel that we have. We appreciate your time. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really terrific stuff.
Yeah.
From 4 parts of the country, and doctors who just give it to you straight in layman's terms. That was excellent.
One common theme, though, unvaccinated hospitalizations.
And all of them say this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Right.
You're looking at 90+% of hospitalization.